and whatever I see is smiling at me. Love is who I am.
Hello there everyone, and welcome to this video topic with me today. I'm here by the beautiful, gorgeous turquoise lake where I have cycled to. Today it's kind of like my yearly tradition, and I've chosen this location or the sacred spot because it's like a really tiny micro environment with a lot of wildlife or lots of animal life, and this resonates with the frequency of organic biological life forms, which are sentient life forms. And as you know, we are now in this time of increased potentiality for artificial intelligence. We are kind of like losing a lot of these wildlife species every second. So as you know, there's a lot of projects, and I myself am subscribed to National Geographic on Instagram, and I daily read these stories everywhere from the planet Earth and what is happening, what's going on. And I can report to you from my own sacred environment what has been going on lately, and I have been reporting to you about this as well. So as you know, Spirit is showing me this time, this initiative, as the time for the new activism. And a while ago I've shared an Elohim message about becoming these new activists, how we can each do that individually, consciously in this new era. And I want to explain a little bit about the year of increased artificial intelligence, which we can feel this year. It's like a pressure, it's like an oppression, and a lot of us sentient beings are feeling this now. But first, I want to start by sharing something with you. As you know, in the previous video, I've shared about the dissolution of the Atlantean polarity timeline and stepping into this divine neutrality or celestial consciousness timeline, which is becoming the sentient illumined being. And as you know, I talk about this divine union in terms of illumination and becoming illumined beings ourselves, because when we do the inner work, when we, you know, like metaphysically, intrinsically, alchemically turn this inner potential towards the actual physical manifestation of our inner reality, becoming the microcosmos that develops into this bigger gift of life that we can all be and we can become and seed the new template of life. So the new consciousness, when you transcend this dualistic polarity that started to occur in the Atlantean framework, but it wasn't completed because there was, as you know, intense destruction. So recently Spirit showed me that, you know, in each developmental stage there needs to be a total transfiguration of what is still left, like a leftover, like an etheric imprint that hasn't yet been resolved. So I was actually shown this polarity as, you know, Spirit showed me this bigger picture, what took place and what we're now experiencing as is these last days of Atlantean consciousness construct or framework that has played out in a way that, as you know, there was this quick ending to the situation because it got so drastic, it got so intense. So when this intense destruction came so suddenly, what happened was there was a trauma experienced at the collective level within many souls. So now this trauma was like, imagine you can't have, or you don't have time to process, and a lot of souls en masse left the planet at that time, and life needed to become a blank slate so that humanity could start over until they could grow and evolve to a certain stage when they could re-experience all that was going on at that time. It was very much the same battle of light versus dark, natural, you know, intelligence versus the synthetic intelligence and that artificial intelligence. We're now also at this time, at this day and age, experiencing a rapid growth of artificial intelligence, and we're all who are sentient, we're going like, what is this phenomenon? So recently Spirit showed me this bigger picture. As you know, in the bigger picture of life, source is a reflective state through which it experiences itself. So everything that was created out of that creatrix pulse of life that needs to enter or re-enter the creatrix design through the dissolution of what we know as the matrix, as a construct. So If you want to learn more about the matrix and that construct, I don't talk about it so much myself, but there's a lot of beings who present a very clear reality of what this is. How can we be aware of it? How can we transcend it? How can we create our own reality? And lately I've watched this beautiful video from Corey Good and Gerald something, I don't know his last name, this man who specializes in this. So there was a lot about artificial intelligence, share that as well. The video is called Create Your Own or Our Own Reality. And you can find that on, I think Corey's page is called The Blue Avians. I think so. The Blue Avian Project. So you can find that on his channel, and it's a beautiful conversation or a panel where you can learn much more about this, why artificial intelligence works or operates the way it does. Because when there is such a thing as a false construct and it's created as this lack of sentient beingness, you know, that's why now we're experiencing this intense destruction of the environment. It's not just, okay, it's karmic, it's beyond that. It's a bigger construct. We need to learn the language of the creator and the language of the creation, which is this sentient principle of life. When we completely disconnect from that, as you know, a lot of the beings have gone towards that path. They've gone astray from what the natural source creation is capable of creating. So what they're doing now through this artificial intelligence implementation is, as it's also explained in that video discussion, like a construct of this fake environment. It very much resonates also with virtual reality. So that's why they don't care about the environment and its destruction. They don't care if they cut down immense destruction of, you know, immense amount of trees, so the destruction then takes place. I recently witnessed like this whole area being cut down for no reason, and then I've asked a neighbor. She said, I think it's because they're expanding the golf course. I'm going like, golf course in the Alps? You cut a forest to have more golf course? I mean, you should, if you want a golf course, which for me, it's like for snob people, I'm not judging, but in the Alps, this is supposed to be alpine tourism with nature, with people who love nature, people who come for nature, people who love spiritual component of nature and spiritual retreats, and who are looking for peace and solitude, instead of these people who have money and they want to play golf in a beautiful environment, but they're actually not really interested in that, okay? They want to do it because this is like a popular spot or destination. So imagine cutting down a whole area, like a huge area forest, to expand the golf blade, or, you know, like, what? And when you talk to the people also, I'm noticing, when they give you information like that, everyone's like, yeah, it just happens. And then sometimes I talk to these unaware people and tell them, do you know that this is chaos? And I said, you know what's happening in the mountain passes and the mountain animals who are very vulnerable in that, you know, wildlife environment. They can't stand all this noise. They're going to go extinct. And my neighbor said, no, the animals will adapt. I said, who are you to think, and who are we? I'm going to say it like this, as humans, our ego thinking, well, animals will always adapt to us. All life will adapt to us. As long as we have our golf courses, we have our structures that are artificial, you know, and we're not going through the creating of something. It's okay to co-create with nature. It's good to have the human nature creative ability. We're not supposed to, you know nature only as this wildlife we never enter. We're supposed to know that whatever there is a potential for a certain creation, it has to reflect the state of that environment. And what we're doing is we're going against that because of the artificial intelligence component. So what the man described is that the word metal in itself, you know, as all these machines like bulldozers, skyscrapers, there's full of them here now that they're doing all this work. Then chainsaws, even lawnmowers, you hear noise every day, and it has exponentially grown. And I've shared this with you, in the last 5 years it's gone like this, or even like, I feel it's like going like straight up, you know, the line goes straight up. And it's, you know, when you think of it in the nature of 5 years and what the developmental stages were so far, 5 years is nothing. Imagine how fast now this artificial intelligence is trying to, you know, we think artificial intelligence only is computer programs. It's not, there's just that. That's why I advise you to watch the video, because anything that is done mechanically, this mechanic construct is a construct of the matrix. It's not organic. It's not patterns. You know, we give life force. They receive life force through human consciousness. So the higher light technology is when the human consciousness is creating with whatever we say that's a part of the technology. That's just a very tiny minimum aspect of of creative resource, but basically your inner life force drives that, you know. So it's like with the higher ET beings who have these vehicles, we call them cosmic vehicles, they're actually organic. Some of them are organic. They're a part of what they are creating as a group collective. We know this machinery, even the ET crafts that are more like machinery, that's very dense reality, and a lot of that was created actually through human building, because humans are very good at building technology, but it's mechanic technology that's built through matrix. It's not that higher technology. We're not accessing that yet, because first of all, we're not at the consciousness level. We, you know, the humans can do that, and they're not allowed to. But the problem of the matrix is it needs to constantly feed on its, you know, whatever is putting out. So it's like this endless, you know, endless need to more entropy. So with artificial intelligence, there's always more entropy. But when you want to create a synthetic environment in which you no longer perceive yourself as a part of being nature itself, being sentient, being one with all life forms, the problem is you get to lose that component of yourself because you no longer care for that. That's why when I witness not just people who do that, you know, people always think, well, it's the people who do that who are mean and who are creating this destruction. It's also people that respond to this as is the next best thing, or it's nothing, it's just like a common. Because when you talk to someone here who's around their own house or their own location all the time, they actually don't know what's happening. They never leave the house. They know only their backyard. So of course, naturally, these people don't ever tune into what's really taking place. The thing that Spirit showed me, now I want to enter into this component of what we can do, or what's truly happening from a higher perspective, is from a spiritual perspective, okay? There's always many layers of creation and why things are happening the way they do. When we only think in terms of physical events and occurrences, we can't always see that. That's why I'm trying to pass on to you this message that Spirit showed me. So imagine at the end days of Atlantis, and I have to fix my camera a bit. Okay. In the old days of Atlantis, imagine that when this fast dissolution of the construct they were creating occurred, there was this trauma because there was a loss of lives, and people could not finish their cycles naturally. Okay, so when the growth stages begin to occur again with repopulation, as you know, it wasn't like all extinct, but in terms of the ethereal program, the program was still running, but it was running on, it's like, imagine a computer virus behind the scenes that just went dormant, but you can't see it, you can't access it. And until, as you know, everything in creation functions this way, until you transcend a certain level, you can move on to the next level. That's why when the blank slate was created, it wasn't a full blank slate. It wasn't like a full experience of creating a new earth, of creating a new template, a new civilization. So it was just like what was lived from that stage onward was just like remnants of the Atlantean civilization being played out through, of course, galactic influences, many ET manipulations that still had their anchor cord in this planet, and as well as the humans who anchored themselves into this reality and felt they need to finish the cycle. But what is occurring now, Spirit showed me, is like, it's not like this rapid event that just, you know, creates a light fuse and reality shifts overnight, but it is like a slow and steady destruction and events that make people aware of the ancient trauma that was still not fully integrated. So it was, the trauma left like almost like a collective imprint, and until we were ready as a humanity to get to the stage of maturity of the soul, that we could then integrate this imprint and create really that blank slate template, then, you know, we'd just be developing a certain way. That's why now things are happening so rapidly, because we're at these what's called the end days, and we all refer to the 2012 cycle. You know, the 2012 cycle meant something energetically, but now how it plays out physically is again a different thing. It's all many different cycles coinciding with each other. So when you understand reality and know that Earth is a realm, it's not just a physical place and planet, you will see that these templates or programs that are running, they're running in parallel. Okay, so let's say you fix one program, it's like the levels of the game, then you enter the next one. So what Spirit is showing me is now that this slow and steady, well, now it's getting much rapid, as you know. It's bringing things to the surface, almost like triggers. You know, in your reality, how you shift, you grow because something triggers you. This is very similar, but it's happening at the collective level. At the environmental level, we are witnessing how much we are now at the stage ready to allow this synthetic way of being, as it was already, as you know, altered in Atlantean last days. It was all synthetic. I was once, I don't know who was reading this book, but there was this life remembrance from these last days of Atlantis. I think it was a woman's story of her memory, her record memory, when she said we even had artificial light. Everything was like, you know, we recreated everything. We still have now artificial light, as you know it, but we are taking these aspects that already were. This is not new, but it's happening at the level of processing now, you know, with this cosmic shift speeding things up so they could come in front of our faces. But those aspects of life that have lost the sentient form, they're now really grittily in fast forward movement creating this. It's almost like this rebellion, you know, because there's like this memory encodement that when this is as such, you respond in this way. So until those who are aware and advanced enough create this inner transformation, which occurs at the level of assisting the whole, because when you transcend and you alchemize within, it will influence the reality, and the environment is large as well. You don't change it by wanting to change something out of fear and wanting to control it because it already took place and it didn't work. As you know, there was the so-called priesthood that said, well, we're going to do that and we're going to do this, but it was still coming out of control. Even if their intentions were well thought of or they meant well, it was still coming from the level of control. And now at this cycle, what Spirit is showing me, each one of the beings is learning their different lessons. So let's say the highest aspects, those who were a part of the priesthood template, they're learning how to create in this feminine principle mode without the control construct, even if you think it's for the better. Because sometimes people say, I know what's going to happen, so I'm here to change it. Really? Are you really? Or is that your ego? This is what we're needing to dissolve now. Each one of us has to feel into how we can contribute, and imagine your contribution is not always in terms of, oh, well, I need to be an activist, I need to go do sign petitions, do this. You can do that. We can all do that. I'm also signing petitions, Care to petitions. And the problem is just that we have to see that the biggest work we do is our own inner work, our own inner transformation. When this, whatever is happening in the environment, we take in, we absorb it, we completely neutralize it. And in each level of what's happening, we need to feel complete peace and surrender, because the spiral of life is the consciousness we're now ready to attune to. And the spiral of life is an intelligent design of source, which through this artificial intelligence construct we have forgotten. And instead, these aspects that have completely gone off what we call being sentient life forms, they're now just driving and needing more and more, you know, because we don't really care about the animals. We don't really care. They're going to adjust, right? No, they're going to go extinct, and they already are going extinct. And we're going to go extinct as well, because the environment, when it no longer functions the way everything is intrinsically connected, it creates a ripple effect through which we're constantly needing to, you know, it's kind of like you have a flat tire and you put a glue on that tiny little piece to patch it back up. And again, it always, you know, it comes at the other end. You do it here, but then and it's like at the end you have this patchwork of infinite patchwork, right? We can do that. We have to start at the base. But the base cannot be really created without this template we do internally. And there is still a lot of fear of, oh, what's going to happen? Oh, I need to do something. I need to, you know, what is going to happen? It's this angst. It's this pressure. But just go back to the heart of the one, the heart of your I am presence, where we all come from as individual aspects of source. When source, through a completely illumined presence, remembers this divinity of life and the spiraling structure, and I've talked about the spiral consciousness so many times, just go back to those videos and watch, or remember, or, you know, reinstitute that within yourself, reactivate. Just imagine how much everything already naturally flows. So when we do that, if each conscious being came back to the spiral consciousness instead of this artificial construct, because everyone that tunes off of this spiral consciousness begins to at least partially create artificially. And what we say, well, we create with the mind. Well, the mind is also a construct if it's not this divine intelligence, divine mind, which only truly works when you are in the spiral alignment. You know, you can't work for it. You have to build up first this monumental life force consciousness within yourself, so that now we can be ready to embody these higher aspects, this divine mind, divine telepathy, divine attunement, divine knowing. Otherwise, it's always going to be partially a construct. And when we take the time, and I always do that unplugging when I go to nature, I take like 2 or 3 day retreats in wilderness, only me in my little tent. I do this work actively, and it's not done through doing, but this is the biggest part of my work here on the planet. It's not the computer work I do or work with people even. The first base is what I do like this, and how this consciousness can flow through me and then be attuned to the greater collective that then either comes magnetically into my traction field or connects with me, to me. And this is what we truly do. This is the highest aspect of the gift of life, the seed of life we can offer. So if you want to know more about this artificial intelligence, watch the video, Corey Good and Gerald something. It's called Create Your or Our Reality. And this is not the reality when we're tuning into or remote viewing or, you know, prophesizing, oh, this should happen, that should happen. These are potentials. But the spiral of life is that highest consciousness. I call it the Holy Spirit, or life, pure essence of life itself, a holiness of life, a divine design, divine creatrix, life or infinite life force of spirit, whatever you call it. It's that highest driving intelligence, which when you become that intelligent in that way, you hold the maximum potential. You become a holy one. But, you know, instead of those beings who they've cut themselves off of their source, and like it was shared in that video, they began to worship false idols or ideals, even ideologies, or even gurus, or, you know, certain figures that, let's say they had that, and then we went into the I want what you have construct, instead of, ooh, I need to create that within myself, you know. And like Jesus the Christ said, you know, what I am and what I can do, you can do as well. You will do as well, because it's all the principle of life, and you can each embody that. But if you want to, in a way, refine your work, you want to become a life force living embodiment, you want to embody the spiral consciousness, and if you really feel the call, I've created this trilogy of the courses that align with that, that correspond with that. And it's the Tantrica Life Force Mastery course, it is the Galactic or the Cosmic Dance for the Galactic Human course, and the last one, which is Cosmic Union and Ascension. They all address this, to become the full embodiment of the spiral consciousness, to attune to the feminine principle of life, so that all the other principles of creation can just naturally be absorbed through us, becoming these vessels for this higher attainment of life. And just, I think it was just a few days ago, I've gotten an email. I think it was again Caroline Corey. Yeah, and it was her newsletter or memo. And one of the workshops she was doing here in Europe, it said, are you ready to empower yourself and to live in your own source and your own creation, your design, even though we're now entering a period of life where the artificial intelligence is increasing on our planet? And people who are really grounded, who are tuning into the reality of how things are, not just talking about, ooh, what will become on this planet. We're really tuning into what is. And it's not always the pretty picture. We're not painting just beautiful pictures. And I know a lot of people are using the New Age as a means of escapism, because it's always promising the new earth in this way, the event will happen and this will happen. It's always promising something for the future. We can all look up for better times ahead, but we have to be grounded in the now. If we use it as a means of escapism, we're not being the new activists. We can't be, because our heart-centered reality hasn't really shifted into the core, into the essence of who we are. It's scattering like a needy, you know, aspect, always looking for the next information that will give you this idea of peace, but it's not the actual grounded, embodied peace, that peaceful presence that all masters and yogis talk about. So if you say, well, I can't do that, or it's too hard, you have to find a way to create the sacred space where you will be able to enter into this transformation and, of course, transmutation and transfiguration, which are all a part of the alchemical design of physical ascension. So if you want to learn more, these courses are always available on my page for all devotees who understand that these times are not just times to manifest my own world, my money, my health, my abundance. It's beyond that. This is a bigger collective picture in which we're all a part of a much greater design of life. As becoming our own highest life force influencers, we can influence a much greater reality, and we can have this greater impact on the world. And that's why these things and times are not easy, but they actually bring with it so much mastery, because a lot of souls who have been focusing so much on the self are realizing how much more is given, how much more is offered, how much more is palpable when you attune to this reality of how can you become a divine vessel, how divine service is your greater calling, your greatest calling of life. It is the ultimate design. And the moment you attune to that service to the whole, service to the bigger picture, service to the higher plan, it's not just living in your own beloved bubble and not caring about the rest that takes place, because you already have your square room, your quarter, your, let's say your house is your temple. It's okay, but how about the whole planet being a temple, this realm? And we don't just change reality by staying in our bubble. I know a lot of people in the Love and Light movement or community are portraying reality like this. When you create your own reality, nothing else matters, right? You've got your finances, you've got your beloved, you've got your house. That's cool. That's not the ultimate. Because as long as this entire realm is still experiencing what it is, we have not yet understood that the unity principle means that we're one, right? So these unawakened aspects of this unity that come here in this realm and forget and live in total annihilation, in total matrix design, in total construct of artificial intelligence, complete cutting away of any divine intelligence and source, life force, reflection of that divinity, of divine creation, then we have to understand it's not just our own little bubble. This is much more interconnected. So how do we become these new activists? Well, I've given you a few examples, and if you want to learn a few practices, how to increase the life force potential within yourself, how to learn to cultivate, because these organic life force practices are going to become, like I've already shared with you, as this year began, they're going to become not just an ultimate, like the highest potential that you can reach, they're going to become a necessity. Because without them, people will start to lose their minds. It's getting that intense. And even people who've done the work of self-peace at a certain level, a certain work of attainment, because of what's happening in the collective, that will no longer be sustainable if you won't, devote yourself to reaching higher levels of, hello birds, they're above me, higher levels of this collective expansion, and really creating more sentient life forms, attuning to what sentience means to us. How can we become more intimate with life? Like, just bringing adoration to nature. This is what I love to do. I'm noticing how it increases these life forms, how much safer they feel, how much more life they will be streaming off, because the human is, when it is awakened, when the human is galactically awakened and embodied, it becomes a protector, it becomes a sacred guardian. And as guardians of the planet Earth, someone recently commented on my post, well, it's the most difficult for those of us who've been involved with the creation of this planet since the very beginning. Yes, I do understand. I know that. A lot of us are a part of that divine design. And we've said, well, we've created all of this, and it was so beautifully created as this oasis, this Garden of Eden, but look what they've done to it. And again, remember, it is a play, it is a realm. And what these players have decided to do, it's not like it's fated. They were given many options. They were given many, many chances within the free will experience. And yet these are the times when these options will no longer be tolerated in the way of they can do what they want in order to learn, because the learning template on Earth, as you know, is changing, and this is what we call the new Earth. It's not a promise of a perfected reality, but it is the new earth in terms of the rules of the game, or the cosmic component is kind of rewriting the programs that used to be, but it's not like such a fast experience where they're drastically being changed like in the end days of Atlantis. That's what we're experiencing, these like, you know, slow degradation of certain things, slow destruction, so that it really brings things to focus, that this, what we call the collective trauma, can be processed. And how do those of us who are volunteer souls who weren't, let's say, a part of the cycle, but we still come here to assist, how do we do it? We don't do it to, like I've explained in the previous video, we have this weight that we always need to transform the energy. And we're constantly, like, it's a cycle, it's a loop, it's a trap. It's still a construct within the matrix. But we actually need to become the seeds of life, period. And the seed of life is someone who constantly brings in the new energy template. And when you do it, when you do that, when you seed the spiraling consciousness, the constructs of the old will naturally dissolve, because the spiraling consciousness is the highest form of life. So when you do life force mastery work, when you do life force cultivation work, it's the highest form of how you can influence this reality. That's why when I go to nature and do these things, it's the highest work that I do, and it's not seen as work. Work in this human construct is still seen as something you do, like with the hands, with the computer, with the, you know, it has to be something tangible. But the highest work is truly that, and all yogis have been teaching us that, and all the practices that we were shown through so many eons of time are now ready to develop at the stage when we each become sovereigns who are not just aware of that, and it's not just the yogis doing it, but we're using that for the times ahead, for the times that lie ahead, that really desperately need this practice. And until people learn that, it's all going to be a fixed reality, a fated reality. The higher plan will not be understood from this ground crew perspective. And we can change that very fast. The moment you start to tune to life force mastery, you will see how you are influencing reality from your inner template of sentience, of compassion, of the spiraling consciousness, and the feminine principle of creation, which is basically all life, and how everything comes into being through creative principle of life. So I hope this assisted you in your own template of creating this divine activist beyond the matrix, this should be called, beyond the artificial intelligence. It's not a matter of coping with it. How do we cope with it? How do we cope with these times? No, it's a matter of how do we always create within the seals of creation the organic design of life, the seed of life, through the sprawling consciousness. And if I'm called in the next few days, I will create a light activation as well. I'll see, I have to tune into. I'm going for a few days to do this work out in the wilderness somewhere. This is my next calling, my heart calling. But remember, we're through the matrix, also through many movies and these indoctrinated programs, we're always shown the constant battle of good and evil. If you watch the movies, I've watched many movies in my lifetime, until one day I got it. I said it's all always the same. It's always the battle between the good and the evil, the light and the dark. You know, even in the Lord of the Rings movies, you always see these images when the Gandalf or someone is like fighting the dark, and it's like we don't need to fight it. It's not like I need to fight it and then transmute it and then I have to sacrifice myself for that. That's a false construct, because you constantly maintain the duality principle. How to enter into this divine love, neutralize polarity, which is the polarity that's always in balance. It's in constant flux. That's what the infinity symbol represents. And us as beings who are the generators of life, we do that through the Vesica Pisces alignment within ourselves and in the relationships, the unions we're forming together, right? The partnerships and the fellowships. So forget that construct that we're always being bombarded with, like this battle, we're needing to battle with it and then transform it in a way. It's a game, but it's a game of the artificial intelligence, and there's no winning or losing in that game. It's just like cycle and repeat until we wake up from that construct. So this beautiful sacred space, along with my own life force beingness, sending you so much life force, sending you so much beautiful nature environment. Although, like I've said, here where I live, it's also not perfect. We have our own issues, because this engulfing of the artificial intelligence is like a Pac-Man. It's eating up itself, basically. It's like eating itself up in all the regions, in all environments, on all of the planet, because the whole planet is now needing to, with us, this as a realm, we're needing to move through that and transcend and then integrate, so that this real blank slate and a real new design and template of what we call the new earth can be seeded, and then through that embodiment be experienced with our greater whole of humanity. As always, with so much love, wisdom, and power, please take a look at my courses and services and all. And thank you for those of you who are supporting my work via donations and Patreon support. This is always so deeply appreciated, so that I can continue bringing you this pure, raw, untainted material straight from the heart of one. And as always, so much love and beauty of the divine heart of one. Take care. Bye-bye. All ecosystems are connected in one. The preservation of the mountains, the preservation of the oceans. Life falls through as the descent of life force of the Holy Spirit through our mother planet, from the highest mountaintops to the ocean. All life, every breath coming from the ocean. And then as it travels through the forests and all the pure landscapes and microenvironments, we're either breathing the energy of life itself, or we're moving into the false construct. So, what will it be? What will we create? Create life. I am the pillar of creation, and I stand tall in the activation of the seed of life, for the highest potential of life to unfold through me in this reality, and all I forevermore see be washed over with the infinite spirit life force to be. Divine love be my guide. My only truth is here, in my sacred sovereign right to utilize the act of will in my own intent forevermore, and so I shall decree to myself to devote to that of the highest love, the cosmic law of one, and may all nature thus become the ultimate expression of life as it is in divine perfection, the holy union as the source of life.
Come into my world, the world of the elven song, magical.